The Clinic's Dark Secret, Chapter 1, The Wake Up. The first thing Emma Russo noticed was the hum. Low and electric, like fluorescent lights swallowing silence. Then came the sting, a sharp antiseptic bite in the back of her throat. Her eyes fluttered open, and white filled her vision. Ceiling panels glaring above her, sterile and endless. When she tried to move, straps cut into her wrists. Panic jolted her awake. She yanked her arms, but the restraints clamped harder, pulling her against the bed. Her ankles were bound too. Her breath rasped, fast, shallow, desperate. Where the hell was she? Her last memory was of rain on a windshield, taxi wipers blurring the city lights into smeared ribbons. She'd been on her way home from a late shift at the bar. A red light. A man in a hood crossing the street. Then, nothing. Her pulse hammered now, chest aching with the effort. A door hissed open. Emma turned her head as a woman in pale blue scrubs stepped in. Short hair tucked behind her ears, surgical mask pulled snug across her mouth. She moved with unsettling calm, almost mechanical. "You're awake?" the nurse said softly. I swallowed hard. "Where am I? What happened?" The nurse checked the IV line running into Emma's arm. She held up a syringe, slid it into the drip chamber, and pushed the plunger. "You'll feel better soon," the nurse whispered. "No!" Emma jerked her head away. "I'm not sick. Take this off me. Let me out." Her voice cracked, echoing in the small, sterile room. The walls seemed too thick, swallowing the sound before it could travel. The nurse leaned closer, eyes scanning Emma with something that wasn't concerned, something colder. "You shouldn't have come here," she murmured. "They already know." Emma froze. "What? Who knows?" The nurse's hand lingered on the IV, fingers twitching as if wanting to say more, but the door hissed again. Another figure entered, this one in a white coat, male, tall, clipboard in hand. The nurse stiffened, withdrew, and slipped out without another word. The doctor's face was calm, almost bland. He adjusted his glasses, tapped his pen on the board. "Emma Russo, 29, resident of Eastwood. Yes?" Emma glared at him. "Why am I here?" He smiled thinly. "You checked in voluntarily. Don't you remember?" "That's a lie. Memory gaps are common during intake," he said smoothly, jotting something down. "Rest will help." "I didn't check in anywhere." But he had already turned away, writing, ignoring her panic like background noise. Through the glass window of the door, Emma caught a glimpse of something that turned her stomach cold. Rows of other rooms, beds like hers, people strapped down, still, eyes half open but unfocused, some twitching, some not moving at all. Her scream tore from her throat, raw and furious. "Help! Somebody help me!" The doctor pressed a button on the wall. A hiss filled the room. The lights above seemed to swell brighter, then dim. Her chest felt heavy, lids dragging closed. The last thing she saw was the clipboard tucked under the doctor's arm. On it, in neat black print, a phrase circled 3 times. Candidate 47. Chapter 2. The Rules. Emma
awoke to the scrape of metal. Her restraints were gone. The bed rails had been lowered. The IV pulled from her arm. She was dressed now in a pale blue jumpsuit, thin fabric that smelled faintly of bleach. Her throat was dry, lips cracked. The same nurse from before hovered nearby, carrying a plastic tray. On it sat a bowl of colorless porridge, a paper cup of water, and a folded card. Emma's voice rasped, "Where am I?" The nurse placed the tray down without answering. Her eyes flicked once toward the camera in the corner of the room. A tiny red light pulsed there, steady and unblinking. "Eat," the nurse said. Then orientation. Emma pushed the tray aside. "I don't want this. I want to call someone." The nurse leaned close, her face calm, but her voice dropping to a whisper that barely carried. "You keep asking questions, they'll notice. And if they notice," she glanced toward the door, then back at Emma, "you'll wish you hadn't." The door hissed open before Emma could reply. A guard in black uniform stood waiting. Not a doctor, not a nurse. A guard. "Orientation," he barked. The nurse straightened instantly, her mask of indifference back in place. She collected the tray and left. The guard gestured. Emma's legs trembled as she slid off the bed, but she followed. The hallway outside stretched long and blindingly white, lined with identical doors. Cameras every 20 feet. The air smelled like antiseptic and something faintly metallic. Other patients shuffled ahead of her. All wore the same jumpsuit. Their eyes seemed dulled, shoulders slumped. They didn't speak. They were led into a cafeteria, sterile steel tables bolted to the floor. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. Guards lined the walls, their hands resting casually on batons clipped to their belts. At the front of the room, a set of rules was stenciled in thick black letters across the wall. 1, no questions. 2, no touching. 3, no leaving assigned areas. 4, silence during meals. 5, obedience ensures progress. Emma's skin prickled as she read them. A woman at the next table stared at her bowl of soup without moving. A man twitched as though restraining the urge to speak, his lips trembling. A guard noticed, slammed a baton against the steel table. The sound cracked through the silence like a gunshot. The man froze, eyes wide. Emma forced herself to swallow a spoonful of soup. It was lukewarm, tasteless, but hunger pressed her compliance. Halfway through the meal, someone sat across from her. A man in his 30s, buzzed hair, scar running from temple to jaw. His eyes, though tired, held something different, an alertness the others lacked. He didn't look at her directly. Instead, he kept his head down, stirring his soup. "You're new," he muttered. Emma's heart leapt. A voice. Finally. "Yes," she whispered back. He lifted his spoon, sipped, then spoke low enough only she could hear. "Name's Marcus. Don't ask me what I'm in for. Don't tell me what you're in for. Just know this. You don't leave. Ever." Emma's stomach twisted. "What do you mean?" Marcus's scar tugged as his jaw clenched. "I checked myself in. PTSD, they said they'd help me. That was 6 months ago. Every time I asked to leave, denied." Her chest tightened. So what is this place? Marcus's eyes flicked toward the east wall. There, a set of heavy steel doors loomed, thicker than anything else in the facility. No signs, no windows, just a keypad lock that blinked red every few seconds. They take people through there, Marcus said softly. Nobody comes back. Emma followed his gaze, unease flooding her. Before she could respond, a guard slammed a baton against her table. No talking. Marcus bent back over his soup, silent. Emma forced herself to eat, though her hands trembled. That night, in her assigned dormitory, she lay on a thin mattress, staring at the ceiling. Rows of beds lined the room, each occupied by a silent patient. The air smelled of disinfectant and sweat. Guards paced outside. Emma turned on her side and saw Marcus 2 beds down. His eyes caught hers in the dim light. He rolled onto his back and lifted one hand briefly above his blanket. In it, a folded scrap of paper. He waited until the guards turned, then flicked his wrist. The paper landed near her pillow. Heart pounding, Emma tucked it quickly under her blanket before the guards noticed. She unfolded it with shaking hands. In jagged handwriting it read, "Meet me at 2 a.m. Don't let them see." Emma's throat dried. She closed her eyes, forcing her breath to steady. Outside, a door clanged somewhere down the hall. Then faintly, the sound of a scream. It came from beyond the East Wing's steel doors. And then, silence.
Chapter 3. The Disappearance. The dormitory clock ticked louder than her heartbeat. Emma lay staying beneath her thin blanket, eyes fixed on the glowing red digits as they crawled toward 2 a.m. Her hands were damp with sweat, though the air was icy. Every creak of the building sounded like a warning. She counted the guards' steps outside, measured, heavy, rhythmic. When their boots passed beyond the dorm door, she slid silently from her bed. The floor was cold under her bare feet. She moved low, hugging shadows, weaving between rows of sleeping patients. No one stirred. The silence felt wrong, too deep, like a stage where everyone played dead. At the far corner, Marcus was waiting. His scar glinted in the faint light, his face drawn tight with urgency. He motioned her closer. "You came," he whispered. Emma crouched beside him. "What is happening here?" Marcus glanced toward the east wall, where beyond lay the steel doors. "This isn't a clinic. It's a holding center, a funnel. They filter people through those doors, then nothing. No one returns. No bodies. Just gone." Emma's pulse raced. "Why us?" Marcus muttered. "Everyone here has one thing in common. We're ghosts. No family. No one who'd come knocking too hard. I served overseas. Burned through my marriage. Lost touch with everyone back home. Checked in for help." He spat the word. "I was perfect for them." Emma shivered. She thought of her own fractured life, long shifts at the bar, estranged from her sister, no close friends who'd notice if she vanished for a week. She fit the mold too well. Before she could speak, the corridor outside exploded with white light. Flood lamps flared. Boots thundered. "Run!" Marcus hissed, then shoved her toward the laundry chute at the wall. Emma scrambled, heart pounding in her ears. But guards surged through the dorm entrance, black uniforms slicing the dark. One grabbed her by the arm, yanking her back. She screamed, clawing at his grip, but another guard swung a baton, knocking the wind from her chest. Marcus roared, lunging at them. He fought like a man who'd been a soldier, fists brutal, movements sharp. For a moment, Emma thought he might break free. But 3 guards slammed him down, pinning him to the floor. Emma twisted against her captor. "Let him go!" The head guard snarled, pressing a knee into Marcus's back. "Protocol breach. Remove him." They dragged Marcus toward the steel doors. His eyes found Emma's, fierce even in the chaos. "Don't stop digging!" he shouted. Then the doors swallowed him whole. Emma thrashed against her guard. "Where are you taking him?" The guard's expression was flat, eyes devoid of emotion. "What Marcus?" Her blood turned to ice. "He was just here. You took him." The guard shoved her back into her bed, securing the straps around her wrists once more. "Sleep," he ordered. There was no Marcus. The lights cut out. Silence dropped like a curtain. Emma lay shaking, her mind reeling. Hours later, morning maybe, she was herded into the cafeteria with the others. The tables gleamed as before. The same rules glared down from the wall. Patients shuffled in silence. But Marcus's seat was empty. No one looked at it. No one seemed to notice. Her throat burned with the urge to scream, to demand answers. But her eyes caught the camera in the corner. Watching. Always watching. She forced her hands to stay steady as she lifted her tray. Porridge again. A plastic spoon. As she set the tray down, something caught her eye. Tucked between the bowl and the napkin was a photograph. Her heart seized. She slid it quickly into her lap, shielded it from the cameras. When she dared a glance, her breath stopped. Marcus, bound to a chair, eyes wide in terror. Behind him, a wall of monitors glowed with shifting images of patients strapped to tables, wires feeding into machines. Her stomach lurched. Someone had slipped this to her. Someone wanted her to see. Her hand shook as she tucked the photo under her jumpsuit. She forced herself to eat another spoonful, pretending to comply. But her mind screamed with one thought, pounding over and over. Marcus was alive, and he was next. Chapter 4. The Experiment. Emma couldn't stop touching the photograph. She kept it pressed flat beneath her mattress, fingertips brushing its edges whenever guards passed, as if to confirm it hadn't vanished. Proof that Marcus existed, proof she wasn't crazy. But the more she clung to it, the more the walls seemed to close in. Every camera lens looked hungrier. Every whisper in the dorm carried her name. 2 days passed, or what she guessed were 2 days. Time here was a blur of white corridors, silent meals, and rules enforced with batons. On the 3rd morning, they came for her. 2 guards into the dormitory without a word, their boots echoed against the tile. One jerked his head. "Candidate 47, with us." Emma's stomach dropped. She was marched through unfamiliar halls, deeper into the complex. The air grew colder, the lighting dimmer. Ahead, a set of frosted glass doors slid open, revealing a pristine examination room. A man waited inside, not the bland doctor from before. This one was younger, sharply dressed in a white coat, his hair slicked neatly back. His eyes, however, were unsettlingly calm, like glassy ponds with no depth. He pleased,
he said, gesturing to the chair at the center of the room. Sit. Emma hesitated. The guard stepped forward. She had no choice. The chair was metal, bolted to the floor, with leather straps hanging from its arms. She lowered herself into it, jaw tight. The doctor smiled faintly. No need to be afraid. We only want to understand you. He opened a folder, flipping through papers that Emma couldn't see. You've experienced recurring dreams since your arrival, haven't you? Emma frowned. What dreams? He lifted a card from the folder and slid it across a small table. An ink blot. Jagged black stains across white paper. What do you see? He asked. Emma blinked at it. For a moment, the blot looked abstract. Shapes, smears. But then as she stared longer, the image shifted. She saw herself, or someone like her, lying on an operating table. Strangers standing above her, their faces hidden behind masks. Their hands moved in unison. And though no mouths moved, Emma swore she heard chanting. Her breath caught. The doctor tilted his head, watching her closely. Go on. Emma tore her eyes away. It's just an ink blot. But his smile widened, as if she'd confirmed something. He slid another card forward, another blot. This one twisted into something worse. A body suspended in liquid, wires feeding into its skull. Its eyes snapped open and locked with hers. Emma shoved the card away. The doctor's pen scratched across his clipboard. Candidate potential high. The words made her skin crawl. He nodded to the guards. Return her. Emma fought their grip, desperate to demand answers, but her throat locked. Her voice shriveled before it could rise. The guards dragged her back to her dorm, strapped her to her bed, and left without a word. That night, she dreamed again. She was on a table, cold metal against her skin. Her chest rose and fell, but she couldn't move. Lights blazed overhead, shapes circled her, chanting in a language she didn't know. A scalpel gleamed. Pain seared her abdomen. She woke screaming. The dorm lights flickered dimly, patients unmoving around her. She sat up and froze. Her jumpsuit stuck to her stomach. She pulled at the fabric and felt something wet. Her fingers touched stitches. A neat line of fresh sutures ran across her lower abdomen. Her heart thrashed against her ribs. Someone had cut her open while she slept. Emma pressed trembling hands against the wound, bile rising in her throat. She scanned the room. Everyone else lay still, as if drugged, oblivious. On the far wall, the camera's red light blinked steadily. Watching. Recording. Emma curled onto her side, clutching her stomach. Whatever they were doing here, she was no longer just a patient. She was a subject. And now, she was marked.
Chapter 5. The Escape Attempt. The stitches itched like a warning. Emma lay awake, counting the space between the guards' footsteps, mapping their patrols the way she used to memorize drink orders behind a Friday night bar, by rhythm, by repetition, by the faintest variance. 3 beats past the dorm door, 5 along the corridor toward the cafeteria. A pause at the junction where the camera sits just a touch too high, aimed a hair to the left. They were patterns, and patterns had seams. Seams could be pried apart. She needed a tool. Morning arrived in a smear of cold light and the metallic taste of fear. The dorm roused under the same silent choreography. Rise, file out, bowls, trays, rules on the wall in block letters that felt heavier every day. No questions, no touching, no leaving assigned areas. She could feel the ink of them pressing into her skin like a brand. Kitchen duty rotated without warning. Today, a guard tapped her shoulder as the line formed. You, he said. "Back." Emma let herself be redirected through a swinging door into the industrial kitchen, a heat haze of steam, stainless steel counters, and the humid scent of overcooked rice. 2 nurses ladled porridge into deep hotel pans, a patient with a shaved head scrubbed trays at a sink, another sorted plastic cutlery into bins, counting under her breath. Emma kept her face blank, her eyes busy. Pots, lids, ladles, knives. No, the blades were missing or locked away. Even the can openers were blunt and riveted to chains. She drifted toward a stack of forks, white plastic prongs harmless as baby teeth. Except there, in a dented bin beneath the prep table, a fistful of rejects, one fork with a clean break where a tine had snapped free, leaving a jagged triangle. She knocked her hip against the bin on purpose. It skittered, plastic clacking loud. The nearest nurse flinched, annoyed. "Careful." "Sorry," Emma murmured, stooping. She gathered the spilled utensils in a clumsy mess, sliding the broken fork up her sleeve with her thumb. The plastic scraped her skin. She didn't breathe until it vanished past her cuff. Back in the cafeteria, she moved like everyone else, tray in hand, a flick of her eyes the only rebellion. Marcus's seat remained empty. Its void felt fluorescent. She ate enough to look compliant. When the meal ended, she followed the line through the corridor, each camera a red pupil. The broken fork prickled against her forearm, threatening to slip. She pressed her elbow to her side to hold it and prayed the shape didn't print through the thin fabric. In the dorm, she lay down, rolled toward the wall, and carefully fished the shard free. It was nothing, a sliver, but edges don't need to be big to cut. She waited. 2 patrol cycles, 3. On the 4th, the dorm door snicked shut and the guard steps receded toward the junction. She sat up swift and quiet and hooked the fork into the hem seam of her jumpsuit to rip free a thin thread. She wound it around the shard to make a crude handle. Not much leverage, but enough to keep it from slipping out of her fingers if her hands got sweaty or slick with... Don't think about that. The strap hardware on the bed was simple. A buckle, a loop, a bolted ring. She threaded the shard's point under the buckle tongue and pried. Plastic flexed. Her hands shook. She forced them still. The tongue popped free. She worked the wrist strap loose. Then the other. Ankles next. A bead of sweat slid into her eye. She blinked hard. The final strap gave with a soft gasp. Free. She sat a moment, dizzy with it, then swung her feet to the floor. The dorm was a hushed landscape of bodies and thin blankets. Somewhere, a man snored in shallow bursts. To her left, a woman lay with open eyes that did not blink. She waved a hand before her face. No reaction. Drugged. Maybe the whole room. She padded to the far corner where the laundry chute lived behind a steel door with a scuffed handle. The hinges creaked as she opened it. A wash of air rose from below, warm, lint-thick. The shaft descended into darkness. An old printed sign warned, "Authorized personnel only," in faded stencils. She didn't plan to climb inside. Not yet. She just needed a place to stash the shard in case she was searched. She wedged it deep into the frame behind a lip of sheet metal and closed the door until it almost latched. The fit was so tight, she had to work the edge with her thumbnail to reopen it. Good. It wouldn't dislodge on its own. A guard's boots clicked in the hall. She slid back into bed, draped the strap over her wrist, and let her breathing go slack. The door opened, then shut. Footsteps receded. She took the next hour to test the dorm's periphery. Bathroom,
supply closet, a narrow utility corridor with a mop sink, and a door cracked just enough to show a slice of forbidden brightness. She slid through when the camera swept away. The forbidden brightness belonged to a junction hall she had never seen. The floors were a higher polish, the walls a shade of gray that glowed like a storm. No stenciled rules here, no posted schedules, just air that hummed with conditioned cold and the thin electrical smell of expensive machines. To the east, the heavy doors. Up close, they were more obscene than they'd looked from the cafeteria, 3 feet thick, matte, reinforced with crossbars and the keypad embedded beside a biometrics pad. The pad pulsed, a slow heartbeat. The seam where the doors met was beveled, as if to swallow anything pushed between. She needed to see past them. She needed to know that Marcus was not yet gone in the way that meant permanent. The keypad required codes. The biometrics pad wanted a palm or a face. She had neither, but she did have ventilation. Above the door, a narrow grill broke the seamless wall. A return vent slot, slated and mean. A small screw held its corner. The screw was not designed to be removed easily, but neither was her fork designed to be a tool. She risked the dash back to the laundry chute and retrieved the shard. At the vent, she slotted the shard's edge into the screw head and leaned, feeling the plastic bend. It skated. She licked her lips and pressed harder, turning millimeter by millimeter until the screw squeaked a fraction loose. Her heart pounded in her ears. Every second was a siren. Candidate 47. She froze. The voice came from beyond the door, filtered, calm, the exact tone of someone who always knew their leverage, not the bland doctor. Another. Colder. Facility policy discourages curiosity. She slid the shard into her sleeve on instinct, then forced her face blank and turned as if she had been stretching, admiring the paint. The corridor was empty. Cameras watched. "Who's there?" she whispered before she could stop herself. Silence. Then a soft electronic chuckle piped through hidden speakers. "Return to your quarters." Her pulse skittered. She backed away, but not before nudging the screw another quarter turn. The grill flexed enough to prove it would come free with time. She memorized its exact angle, then moved. Back in the dorm, she lay rigid and counted footsteps until her bones ached. The voice had known her number. Not her name, her number. She rocked a fraction, the way she used to steady herself before walking onto a stage to pitch an angry Friday night crowd 2-for-1 shots with a smile. You don't show fear. You perform. The chance came in the afternoon when a transfer was announced over the speakers. A line formed outside the dorm as guards called numbers in groups of 5. Patients shuffled into place with the resigned choreography of the institutionalized. Emma slipped into the group called just before hers, drawing a frown from the nearest guard that smoothed when he counted. Still 5. He hadn't noticed the substitution. The guards were not perfect. They were tired and human under all that black plastic. The transfer line moved down the main corridor toward the junction. The east wing door swelled in her vision like a memory of drowning. 2 guards peeled off to approach the keypad. The biometrics pad blinked awake. The door bolts clanked. She didn't have a plan for what to do past the threshold. Plans were privileges for people who weren't being erased. She only had impulse and an edge of plastic.
As the first guard lifted his palm to the scanner, Emma snagged the broken fork from her sleeve, stepped sideways, and drove the jagged triangle into the soft meat above the second guard's knee. He screamed. His leg buckled. Emma shoved past his falling weight and sprinted. The doors were still yawned a fraction, their industrial sigh not yet complete. She flattened, twisted, and slid through the narrowing gap as a baton swung behind her, catching only air where her shoulder had been. Sirens detonated. The corridor beyond was colder, its light a clinical blue that made her jumpsuit look like paper. She ran, shoes slapping tile, breath tearing at her wound until she felt warmth spread under the stitches. Don't think, move. The halls branched like capillaries. To the left, a row of observation windows. To the right, a bank of doors with red status lights. She went left. She needed eyes on what they were hiding. She pressed her face to the first window. Surgical theater, a table centered under an array of articulated lights like chrome spiders. Monitors showed humming organic lines, brain waves, and numbers that flipped too fast to read. On the table lay a patient, strapped. A cap of electrodes hugged their shaven skull. A pale tube ran into a vein. The chest rose and fell shallowly. No doctors moved within. Machines watched instead. She moved to the next window. Another theater, this one occupied by a team in white. Not doctors in the way she knew. No masks, no spoken chatter, only hands that moved in a synchronized rhythm as if they were following an unheard metronome. They adjusted the patient's head, turned a dial on a console that pulsed a soft, wrong color, not LED blue or surgical white, but a pearlescent, luminous glow that felt alive. The hair on Emma's arms rose. Third window. Her breath stopped. Marcus. Head half shaved, eyes closed, chin cinched with a strap to keep his jaw from flopping. Wires crawled from the crown of his skull to a console, thrumming a gentle line that spiked when a nurse, if that was what she was, tapped a command. His hands were unbound. They twitched intermittently as if he were dreaming of running. "Marcus," she said, too soft to be heard beyond glass. Her palm flattened to the window. Warmth leaked through her stitches. She smelled iron and salt. She needed in. She grabbed the handle. It didn't budge. A reader sat where a lock should be. She looked for a fire alarm, a break glass. Nothing. This wing assumed compliance or sedation. From the ceiling, the voice returned, filling the corridor without a visible speaker. "Candidate 47, return to your quarters." "Let him go," Emma shouted, surprising herself. The sound bounced and died. No heads turned inside the theater. No one heard her through the glass, or they pretended not to. "Candidate 47, the voice said, and this time its patience flaked at the edges. "This is your final warning." Emma scanned for anything, a crash bar, a service panel. At the baseboard, a small maintenance hatch sat flush with a hex screw. She jammed the plastic shard into it. It slipped. She drove it harder. The plastic bent, whitening along the stress line. The screw refused. Footsteps thundered behind her, multiple, fast. She had seconds. She pressed her forehead to the glass one last time. "Marcus," she whispered. "Hold on." His eyelids fluttered, just once, a shiver down a paralyzed body. The corridor filled with guards in a black wave. Two took her arms. A third wrenched the shard from her fist. She twisted, bit, kicked, fought like a creature whose final options were to harm and be harmed. A baton caught her in the ribs. A second clipped the back of her knee. She went down, breath imploding. They dragged her backwards. As the theater door opened from within to admit a technician, air spilled out, cold, sweet, carrying a strand of something floral that made her dizzy and then the door sealed and the scent vanished like a lie. They hauled her through the east doors, which yawned with a hydraulic sigh, and pitched her across the threshold of the main corridor like laundry dumped from a chute. Sirens cut off mid-wail. The silence that followed was not ordinary, it was deliberate. A camera tilted. The red light pulsed. She looked up into it and knew, as surely as she knew the shape of her own hand, that someone was watching whose face she would someday see far too close. "Restrain her," a guard said, breathless with exertion and satisfaction. Hands bound her wrists, plastic dug. Another guard cinched a strap around her waist. The world swam. The ceiling speaker sighed alive once more. "Candidate 47, the voice said, gentle again. "Your curiosity has been noted. Return to your quarters. There will be no further warnings." They dragged her past a keypad, past the biometric pad, past the grill she had loosened by a 1/4 inch. She let her head loll, made herself heavy. She counted the bolts along the baseboards and the gaps between camera arcs and breathed through the pain in steady sevens. She could not afford to forget a single angle. The dorm swallowed her with its familiar stink. She was slung into her bed and strapped down tight enough to bruise. A guard wiped her blood from the floor with an efficiency that made her throat burn. As the door hissed and the boots receded, she lay motionless until the patter of her pulse slowed from thunder to rain. Her ribs hurt, her knee throbbed where the baton had landed. Her stitches felt raw. She waited until the camera's red dot blinked long, its tiny, predictable blind, then rolled onto her shoulder and let herself cry silently into the thin pillow. She had seen Marcus alive. She had seen the machines that held him. And she had learned one more thing, a truth that slid into her like a blade and lodged there, cold and instructive. Whatever Hallian was, it did not fear her escape. It feared her knowledge. The lights dimmed toward night. Somewhere in the building, metal shrieked, the sound of something too heavy being moved. The dorm exhaled as drugs or exhaustion claimed the people around her. Emma counted to 100, and then again. She thought of the vent screw, a 1/4 turn from freedom. She thought of the floral sweet chemical on the air and the pearlescent glow of the console and the word candidate stamped over her humanity like an expiration date. Her eyes slid shut and seared themselves with the after-image of Marcus's fluttering eyelid. From the ceiling, barely audible, the intercom breathed her number one more time, intimate as a whisper at a bedside. "Candidate 47, it purred, almost fond. In the darkness, the vent above her bed gave a delicate tick, and a folded rectangle of paper eased through the slats to land on her pillow. On it, in the same jagged hand that had summoned her to the laundry chute, were 4 words that iced her veins. "They know your sister." Chapter 6. The Revelation. The note felt hotter than fire in Emma's hands. "They know your sister." She read it again, the words blurring as her eyes filled. Her sister, Lila, was the only family Emma had left. They hadn't spoken much in the last year, not since their last fight. But the thought of Lila in these people's grip made her chest cave in. She stuffed the note under her pillow as the camera swept its red eye. Her breath came fast, ragged, but she forced her face calm, slack, empty like the others. If they knew her sister, then they knew everything. There was no corner of her life safe anymore. The dorm lights dimmed into the enforced night cycle. Emma lay awake, waiting. Hours passed before she heard the whisper. Psst. Emma shot her head up. Across the aisle, a figure sat upright in her bed, a woman with stringy blonde hair, pale eyes wide and sharp. She leaned close, lips barely moving. "My name's Sarah," she hissed. "I know what they did to Marcus. I know what they're doing to us." Emma's pulse spiked. "How?" "Shh." Sarah put a finger to her lips, then flicked her eyes toward the vent. Cameras weren't the only things listening. Sarah slipped silently from her bed and padded over, crouching beside Emma. Her voice was urgent, rapid. "This isn't a clinic," she hissed. "It's the Ascendants, a cult disguised as medicine. They believe the human mind can be copied, uploaded, perfected. They don't heal people, they hollow them out." Emma's stomach twisted. "What do you mean, uploaded?" Sarah pulled her collar aside. Just behind her left ear was a scar, a raised line of puckered flesh. "Implant," she said. "They put it in me 3 weeks ago. I thought it was for seizures." She let out a bitter laugh. "It isn't. It's a chip, a tether. They're mapping my thoughts every second." Emma stared at the scar, nausea rising. She touched the fresh stitches in her abdomen. Her hand trembled. "They cut me open. What if—" "Shh." Sarah shook her head. "Not yet. That's a different stage. But you're marked. You're candidate 47. The way she said it made Emma shiver. Sarah leaned closer, her breath warm in Emma's ear. "Listen carefully. The Ascendants want to erase people like us, people with no anchor. They'll overwrite our minds with perfect consciousness, something they call the network. When they're done, our bodies are just shells." Emma's throat tightened. "Marcus." "Still alive," Sarah said quickly, "but not for long. Once the upload finishes, he's gone. You saw it, didn't you? Through the window." Emma nodded, tears threatening. Sarah's face hardened. "If we don't get out, that's us." Emma's voice broke. "How do we escape?" Sarah reached into her sleeve and pulled out a tiny object wrapped in gauze. She pressed it into Emma's palm. Emma unwrapped it with trembling fingers. A microchip, bloodied at the edges. Sarah's eyes glowed with a desperate intensity. "I cut mine out with a stolen scalpel. I've been hiding it ever since. Without it, they can't track me. You need to get rid of yours before they put one in." Emma stared at the chip, horror and awe battling in her chest. Sarah grabbed her wrist. "You think they won't touch your sister? They already have names, files. You're not here by chance, Emma. They wanted you." Emma's voice shook. "Why me?" Sarah's grip tightened. "Because you dream. They test for it. They want minds that see things, visions. It's what makes you pliable." Emma's mouth went dry. She thought of the ink blots, the chanting, the images she couldn't explain. "They're already in your head," Sarah whispered. "And once they finish, you'll never know what parts of you were real." Sarah shoved the bloody chip deeper into Emma's hand. "Tomorrow, during transfer, we make our move. If you hesitate, you're dead. If you obey the rules, you're erased. Choose."
Chapter 7. The Betrayal.
Morning came with the hiss of the intercom. Candidates, arise. Bids creaked as patients stirred, their movements sluggish, mechanical. Emma sat up, heart hammering, Sarah's whispered promise echoing in her head. During transfer, we make our move. The chip Sarah had pressed in her hand was gone, hidden deep in the seam of her mattress where even a pat-down wouldn't find it. Emma's fingers traced the outline every few minutes just to know it was still there, proof that she wasn't dreaming, proof that Sarah was real. At breakfast, Sarah slipped into the seat across from her. She didn't speak, but her eyes were alive, darting between guards, memorizing patrols. When she met Emma's gaze, her lips barely shaped the word, ready. Emma nodded, though dread gnawed at her ribs. After the meal, the transfer was called. 5 candidates lined up. Emma was among them. Sarah, too. They shuffled down the corridor, guards flanking both sides. Cameras tracked their every step. The heavy doors to the east wing loomed ahead. Emma's throat went dry. This was it. Sarah's hand brushed hers as they walked, a silent signal. 3 steps more. 2. 1. Then Sarah moved. With startling speed, she ducked low, slammed her shoulder into a guard's ribs, and tore the baton from his belt. In the same breath, she swung, cracking another guard across the temple. He collapsed with a grunt. Chaos erupted. Alarms shrieked. Guards surged forward. "Run!" Sarah screamed, tossing the baton toward Emma. Emma caught it, frozen for a half-second as adrenaline blurred the world. Then hands seized her. 2 guards yanked her backward, pinning her arms. She thrashed, kicking wildly, but their grips were iron. Sarah fought like a wild animal, baton flashing. For a moment, Emma thought she might actually win. But sheer numbers overwhelmed her. 6 guards tackled her at once, driving her face first into the floor. "Stop!" Emma cried. "She's not—" A hand clamped over her mouth. Through the chaos, Emma saw Sarah's face pressed to the tile, blood running from her nose. She was still fighting, spitting curses until one guard jammed a syringe into her neck. Her body went limp in an instant. They dragged her away, kicking and half-conscious. Emma's heart shattered. "No!" Her scream was muffled by the guard's hand. The transfer line dissolved. The other patient shuffled blankly as if nothing had happened. The guards forced Emma back to her dorm. By the time she was strapped into her bed again, sweat soaked her jumpsuit. She waited. Hours passed. The dorm returned to silence. Then the intercom clicked. A doctor's voice, calm and measured. "Candidate 47, your companion, Sarah, was never a patient. She was planted, a test of loyalty. You failed." Emma's breath stopped cold. The blood drained from her face. "What?" The voice continued, smooth as oil. "Sarah wasn't here for treatment. She was bait. To see if you'd betray protocol. And you did." Emma's chest heaved. She remembered Sarah's scar, the chip, the blood. None of it could be faked, could it? The intercom crackled again. "The object she gave you, place it on your pillow." Emma's fingers went numb. The chip. They knew.
She forced her voice steady. "What did you do to her?" Static. Then a cold reply. "See for yourself." The dorm lights flicked off. Across the room, the far wall lit up with a projection from a hidden panel. Sarah was sitting strapped to a chair, electrodes clamped to her skull. Her eyes were wide with terror, lips trembling as if she were praying. Emma lunged against her restraints. "Stop it! Leave her alone!" On screen, the doctor adjusted a console. A surge of current sparked through the electrodes. Sarah convulsed, body jerking violently. Her scream was muffled by the gag in her mouth. The monitors behind her spiked. Text scrolled across them. "Upload in progress." Emma sobbed, her throat raw. "Please, you're killing her." The doctor didn't even look at Sarah. His eyes were on the screen, watching Emma, studying her. Sarah's body arced once more, then went still. The monitor beeped. "Upload successful." The projection blinked out, leaving only the hum of the dorm lights. Emma stared into the dark, her tears burning. They had used Sarah to test her, to break her. And now, Sarah was gone. The intercom purred softly, almost tender. "Candidate 47, you're next."
Chapter 8. The Showdown. They came for her at dawn. Emma had barely closed her eyes when the dorm door hissed open and 3 guards filed in. Their faces were hidden behind black visors, blank and insect-like. The largest one barked her number, Candidate 47, and the sound of it rattled inside her skull like a verdict. She fought as they strapped her arms, but the struggle was useless. Her wrists were pinned to her sides, ankles bound, body lifted and carried down corridors that seemed longer than before, colder, like she was being walked into a tomb. The doors to the east wing yawned open. She didn't look away this time. She wanted every detail burned into her memory. They pushed her into a cavernous chamber. At the center stood a chair unlike anything she had seen before, half surgical table, half throne. Metal restraints glinted under the blue-white lights. Behind it, towers of servers rose like black monoliths, their blinking lights pulsing in hypnotic patterns. The hum was constant, a sound that seemed to vibrate inside her teeth. A man in a white coat approached, hands clasped calmly behind his back. He wasn't the bland doctor, nor the young one with slicked hair. This man was older. His eyes were sharp, his presence filling the room like a general addressing an army. "Emma Russo," he said, his voice smooth, resonant. "You've made it farther than most. Few candidates survive this long without breaking." Emma glared. "What did you do to Sarah?" He smiled faintly. "Sarah was never real. She was a construct, designed to test your thresholds, and she served her purpose well." Emma's nails bit into her palms. "I saw her die." "You saw what you needed to see," he corrected. He gestured to the chair. "Sit and embrace what you were chosen for." The guards forced her down, clamping the restraints tight. Her wrists burned under the pressure. The man leaned close. "We are the ascendants. We don't erase, we transcend. And you, Emma, will be one of us. The human body fails, the human mind fragments, but in the network, there is no decay, no death, only continuity." Her throat closed. "You're copying people, erasing them." He tilted his head. "Not erasing, perfecting." He stepped back, motioning to a console. A technician activated the machine. Lights cascaded across the servers. The hum deepened into a roar. like 1,000 hidden throats chanting in unison. A cap of electrodes was lowered on her head, its metal fingers gripping her scalp. Cold gel oozed against her skin. She tried to thrash, but the restraints held her. The screen above her flickered alive. Her name filled the display. Candidate 47, Emma Russo, upload ready. Her heart slammed against her ribs. She was about to be erased. Then chaos exploded. A crash echoed from the far wall. Sparks flew. The server shuddered. A figure staggered into view. Marcus. His head was still wired, electrodes trailing like torn roots. Blood smeared his temple, his movement sluggish, but his eyes blazed with life. "Emma!" he roared, voice ragged. The technician shouted, scrambling. Guards drew weapons. Marcus grabbed a metal tray and hurled it into the console. The impact sent sparks showering, alarm screaming. The lights above the chair flickered violently. Emma seized the distraction, yanking with every shred of strength. The strap on her right wrist tore against the buckle. Pain split her skin, but she didn't stop. With a primal cry, she ripped her hand free. The technician lunged to secure her. Emma snatched the nearest object, a scalpel, left on the tray, and slashed wildly. The man screamed, blood spraying, collapsing to the floor. The head doctor's calm cracked for the first time. "Stop her!" Emma ripped at the other restraints, adrenaline drowning out the pain. Her left arm snapped free. She lunged forward, scalpel in hand. Marcus crashed into another guard, wrenching his baton free. The servers behind him sparked and wailed, their lights flickering like dying stars. Emma stumbled off the chair, scalpel dripping. She locked eyes with the doctor. He smiled, eerily calm, even now. "It's too late, Emma. You're already inside the network." The machine whined higher, its screens flooding the streams of code, her name scrolling faster and faster, her vision blurred, the room bending like heat haze. She clutched her head, a piercing hum filling her skull. "Fight it!" Marcus shouted, slamming his baton into the console again and again. Emma screamed as white light engulfed her, body convulsing. The last thing she saw was the scalpel in her hand, plunging toward the doctor's chest, and then the world exploded into silence.
Chapter 9. The Aftermath. Silence. For a moment, Emma thought she was dead. No pain, no sound, just the weightless drift of nothing. Then, breath, a ragged gasp. Her chest rose, her body trembled. She was alive. Smoke curled through the chamber. The servers were ruined, screens cracked, sparks hissing across the floor. The ceiling lights flickered in and out, casting the room in strobe flashes of ruin. Emma's hands shook as she pushed herself upright. The scalpel was gone. Blood stained her palm. She didn't know whose. "Marcus?" A cough answered. From the rubble, Marcus staggered forward. He was barely standing, electrodes still dangling from his head, his movement slow, unsteady, but his eyes were clear. He gave her a weak smile. "Guess I'm hard to delete." Relief crashed over her. She stumbled into him, clutching his arm, both of them holding each other up in the burning wreck. Sirens wailed from somewhere above. Shouts echoed through distant corridors. The clinic was in chaos. "Come on," Marcus rasped. "We've got to move." They limped through the east wing, smoke and alarms trailing behind them. The heavy steel doors, once sealed, now hung warped and broken. Beyond, hallways were choked with fleeing staff, patients half-dragged, guards shouting contradictory orders. The machine that had promised perfection was dead, and with it, the order of the clinic. By the time they stumbled into the open night, the building was already surrounded. Floodlights blinded her, sirens cut through the air, police cars, ambulances, emergency crews swarmed the compound. Uniformed officers rushed past them, weapons raised. Someone caught Emma as she fell to her knees. "You're safe," the medic said.
wrapping a blanket around her shoulders. It's over. She tried to believe it. She told them everything in gasping fragments, the experiments, the cult, the implants, the uploads. They listened, nodding, scribbling notes. She saw Marcus loaded into an ambulance, his face pale but alive. For the first time in days, Emma let herself exhale. She collapsed onto a stretcher, eyes fluttering shut. When she woke again, she was in a hospital. The sheets were crisp. The air smelled faintly of antiseptic, but softer, human. A nurse checked her IV, smiling gently. "You've been through hell," the nurse said. "Rest now." Emma almost cried. A real hospital, real people. She was safe. But then the doctors arrived. They scanned her head, running instruments over her skull. One of them frowned, leaning close. Behind her ear, something glowed. A chip, small, pulsing faintly with light. Emma's throat closed. "No!" The doctor met the nurse's eyes. Too calm, too familiar. Emma's pulse thundered. "Take it out! Please, take it out!" The nurse leaned closer, her expression soft, almost pitying, and in the same whisper she'd heard her first night in the clinic, she said, "You shouldn't have come here. They already know." Emma screamed. The sound echoed through the sterile ward, and no one moved to help. The end.